Hello, I'm Conrad Feldman, co-founder and CEO at Quantcast, where we're working to radically simplify advertising on the open internet. For us, that starts with audiences and the ability to measure, evaluate, and activate them with unprecedented speed and simplicity. Today, I want to share with you the power of audience insights to inform and guide marketing decisions and how you can harness audiences to understand your own segments and cohorts for your customers and your prospective customers. The world has changed. On January 20th, the US reported its first case of COVID-19, eventually ushering in an era of stay-at-home orders and social distancing. As the nation begins to reopen, we wanted to take a moment to reflect on the last 12 weeks and reinforce the power of audience insights to inform smart marketing strategies. What are we learning about consumers and their changing habits? Which behaviors are fleeting and which will last? And how will widespread access to high-quality, real-time audience intelligence help marketers embrace a culture of innovation? By tapping into Quantcast's live dataset with our audiences application, we can explore the dynamic evolution of changing consumer behaviors. Starting with the week of March 9th and ending with May 31, we can see consumers move from coping with change to passion projects, finding balance with the new norm, and most recently, on the road to recovery. Diving deeper into week 1, as the World Health Organization labeled COVID-19 a pandemic, the US saw a surge of cases, and President Trump declared a state of emergency. There was a double-digit surge in local and international news interest. Unsurprisingly, everyone reacted with pessimism initially, but how we processed this news varied by generation. Boomers reacted the most negatively, likely because they were highlighted as being more at risk. At the other end of the spectrum, Gen Z recovered the quickest in subsequent weeks, and their media consumption indicates a more hopeful outlook, with increases of interest in warm weather, memes, and positive environmental impact. In week 2, as stay-at-home orders were issued in California and New York, and restaurants closed, people flocked to their kitchens. Interest in cooking surged across the board, more than doubling for all but Gen Z. Exploring the detail behind this new behavior, when segmented by age, we see boomers gravitate towards legacy brands such as Kroger and Food Lion, whereas younger consumers are leaning towards specialized grocery and meal kit providers such as Good Eggs and Gosh Food. As stay-at-home orders were extended to most states, schools moved to distance learning, and brick-and-mortar retail closed their door. We saw week 3 to be a time where people turned their attention to their home and family. While the media widely reported the death of retail, we saw online shopping surges in specific categories, showing that purchasing hadn't entirely disappeared. Rather, it had just found a new digital path. Having decided they could no longer put off home improvement projects, consumer interest in home goods surged in week 3 of stay-at-home orders, with a 3-fold increase. Fashion too saw strong growth, a trend that continued well into May. But with everyone stuck at home with no opportunity to display their sartorial style, what was causing this behavioral shift? When further exploring the audience, we discovered large increases with comfort categories like loungewear and activewear. Notably, there was a marked spike in interest for pajama pants, taking the concept of business casual to the next level. As schools announced plans for distance learning, week 3 saw a surge in homeschooling interest. While huge at 138%, this spike was very short-lived. 4 weeks later, when half our schools announced closures for the rest of the academic year, there was a renewed interest, and this time it signaled a more permanent change in behavior. By week 4, people were turning their boredom towards creative outlets, with needlework and scrapbooking interest having grown by 47% and 34% respectively. While interest was up across the board, a disproportionate increase in scrapbooking came from older, college-educated, affluent men, with the largest spikes in California and New York, which were where the earliest shelter-in-place measures were enacted. By week 5, we'd seen significant and sustained interest in both computer peripherals and computer and video gaming. Were the productivity gains of people getting their home office tech upgraded offset by the lure of video games? Diving into the gamer audience, we saw that the pandemic had provided the catalyst for the traditionally mobile-first female gamer to embrace console and PC gaming. In week 7, the NFL draft sparked chatter about the future of sports. As football picks proceeded as normal, fans obsessively read everything they could, causing week-over-week interest to jump for football, baseball, and basketball. But even with a newfound abundance of time, people had to trade off their personal pursuits. Looking back to week 4, when needlework, scrapbooking, and other hobbies peaked, sports interest was on the decline. Conversely, as sports interest peaked in week 7, we saw a large drop-off in hobby interest. In week 8, consumer behavior started to show promising signs for automakers. While the first few weeks of the pandemic saw traffic to car comparison and dealer web pages drop by half, starting in week 6 and continuing into week 8, we saw a 48% increase in traffic from these lows. The results of this surge in interest only became apparent weeks later in June, when the OEMs announced that May car sales were up. Observers concluded, in June, that this was the first sign of automotive industry recovery. But was it the first sign? Now, this is what excites me about live data. We saw this consumer trend emerge almost 2 months earlier, and the sooner you have intelligence on important shifts in consumer behavior, the better positioned you are to out-innovate your competition. In week 9, perhaps in recognition of the impact of so much home time, we saw interest increase significantly week over week in exercise and running and jogging. In week 10, we saw a 52% increase in interest in investing, with investors perhaps looking at the recent rise of the market and wondering how much further it could go. In week 11, we saw people hopeful about things beginning to open back up. As restrictions on restaurants and entertainments in certain states were lifted, there was a 17% week-over-week increase in dining interest. And in week 12, we saw travel start to make its long journey back. Las Vegas, reliant on the travel industry, has been one of the first cities to make headlines in opening back up. And open back up it did. Hotel bookings started off strongly at the beginning of the year, but as you can see, the number of bookings started to dip sharply and hit a low point in April, with bookings down about 90% from the prior period. Hotel bookings have since surged over 400% as Vegas hotels, casinos, and restaurants continue to advertise their reopening. This travel pattern is not universal, but certainly across the board interest is rising. In only a 12-week period, we're able to see the change in consumer mindset as people processed, readjusted, and found hope. Data is always critical to marketers, but there is unique value in live data that changes at the speed of our fast-paced world. Using our audiences tool, we learned that consumer behavior can change quickly. As marketers, it's critical that we change with them. People adapt, and right now, digital is the center of this new world. As we continue the recovery, a culture of innovation based on accurate and consistent audience data will be critical to all marketers seeking to gain share. With such fast-paced change, it's critical we understand the world around us and the shifts in consumer behavior, whether driven by global events or those specific to local markets and industries. Marketers and publishers need solutions that provide actionable insights, backed by live data that can power their strategy and innovation. We believe that accurate and consistent audience data will serve as the foundation on which we radically simplify advertising on the open internet, making it as simple as social and as effective as search. And so to enable you to understand your audiences and replicate the types of insights that we've just showcased, but for your own customers, prospects, and readers, we are putting the power of Quantcast audiences into the hands of marketers and publishers for free. With Quantcast, you can create and analyze audiences with unprecedented speed and simplicity. Simply log into the tool and select your audiences. You will gain access to rich insights into your customers and target audiences, demographics, interests, purchasing habits, and so much more. You can also compare different audiences to see how they are different and how they're similar. For example, between customer cohorts, even differences between the audiences engaged at different stages in your purchase funnel. While there's no telling precisely when broad consumer confidence will be fully restored, the agile marketer knows there is plenty of opportunity ahead. You can access more pandemic-related insights and learn how to get your own customer insights for free at quantcast.com/insights. Thank you for joining us today.